All right, this is Holly. I'll go ahead and do roll call. All right, either Scott, Tina, Julie, or Allison representing CCI. All right, representing CML, Jacqueline. And this is Holly. I guess technically that position is also now vacant because Colorado Municipal League has not attended any of the meetings this year. So currently the accessibility position is also vacant due to attendee absences. So I think that we'll be voting to either have Cheryl remain in that position, which I do believe she said she was interested in doing. So I think that's later in the agenda. And Cheryl's saying yes, still interested. Representing members at large, Chad. Okay. Representing Lumen, Tim, I did get an email from Tim saying that he probably wouldn't be able to show up till about 11. Representing Entrado, Sean Ward.
Hi, present.
Representing Lumen, Jeff Winkleman. Representing T-Mobile, Jenny. Representing Viero, Ryan or Mary.
This is Ryan. Hi.
Hello. Representing Cinch, Cindy, Tina, or Josh.
Cindy's here.
Representing Bandwidth, Jay or Erica.
This is Jay. I'm here.
Thank you. Representing Gunnison County, Jody.
Present in the room.
Thank you. Representing Morgan County, Danette.
Good morning, I'm here.
Representing Grand Junction, Cindy.
Good morning, I'm here.
Representing Lita, Kimberly, or Valerie.
This is Kimberly and I'm here.
Representing AdCom, Jackie or Ron. So Jackie, I did hear you, but you're really, really quiet. So I don't know if you'll be talking later, if you want to adjust your mic a little bit. Representing Eagle County, Beth. Representing Sterling, Felicia or Paula.
Felicia's here.
Representing Jeffco, Jeff Irvin.
Jeff Irvin here.
Representing Delta, Karina.
Good morning, I'm here.
Representing Douglas, either Deanie or Shannon. And I do see in the chat that Shannon is here, but does not have a mic. Representing Denver, Andrew or Jody.
I'm here in the room. Jody.
And Andrew's online.
Thank you. Representing Jeffcom, Michael or Kevin. Representing Aurora, Tina or Scott. Representing Arapahoe, Kathy.
Kathy's here.
And representing Metza, Matt or Alex.
Matt here.
Representing Garfield, Carl or Tom.
Carl's here.
And representing Boulder, Patty or Christine.
And Patty's on the line.
Thank you. I show that we have quorum and a supermajority as well, with 76% of the voting members here.
This is Jennifer. Thank you, Holly. And our would remind you that if you are present both in the room and on the bridge, to please sign in, listing attendance. And go ahead.
And if I could, I want to give a special welcome to Rebecca White. She's the new director for the Public Utilities Commission. I don't think our previous director ever attended one of these meetings, so thank you very much for making a new precedent and showing up to say hi and meet some of our 911 stakeholders in the state.
Thank you. I have a lot to learn, so I'll be absorbing today. Thanks for letting me sit in. I'm happy you're here.
And another special recognition that this is our first meeting with Jennifer Kirkland as our new state 911 program manager.
Hi, everybody. I'm very happy to be here in this role. So, thank you, Daryl. Our first order of business is a couple of vacancies that we have. Our bylaws do state that if that attendance is required and missing 2 or more meetings leaves a vacancy in the role. So we do have a vacancy in the accessibility position. As Holly stated earlier and Cheryl confirmed, Cheryl would like to be re-voted in. Before we take a vote though, I'd like to ask if there's anybody else who is interested in the position. Hearing none, I would call for a vote to vote Cheryl in as the accessibility representative. Or a motion?
Yeah, there you go.
So moved.
Okay, thanks, Matt and Karina for seconding.
Oh, thanks. I was just gonna ask for people to introduce themselves since I can't see everybody.
Matt Gage moved and Karina Artez seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? I think that carries. Thank you and welcome back, Cheryl. We also have an ILEC position open. And do we have any interested parties in filling that position?
And this is Daryl. I'll just say that's been open for a while. If anybody has any contacts with any of the local ILECs that you think might be interested, let them know about it. It would be really good to get some more, especially from the rural local exchange carrier involvement on the task force.
Okay,
Do we still have an NTC?
No, that's the one that's vacant.
Okay. I will chat with Darla and see if she's still interested.
Okay.
all right. This is Jennifer. Thank you. And we'll address that at the next meeting. Hopefully we've got some interest. And also Holly, tell me again, which position is now vacant due to attendance?
So this is Holly. It looks like the Weld County Commission, the CCI position, or no, I'm sorry. No, they attend every time, sorry. The Colorado Municipal League, Jacqueline Thierry
And that
was
one's a little
recently appointed, but
yeah.
they replaced
that
somebody
one's-
else, but they haven't attended.
And that one's a little different because it is set aside for that specific organization. So really only CML can fill that. So we'll reach out to them and see if they want to have somebody else start attending these meetings.
This is Jennifer. Thank you, Daryl. Moving on, we have a presentation from the Behavioral Health Secure Transport Program, Megan Morrissey, but she is running from another meeting. She said she would be here probably around 10:15. So we will move on into standing reports and pick back up with her when she gets here. So now we're gonna go ahead and put the standing reports on the screen and share. As a reminder, we are moving toward and asking people to put those standing reports in the standing reports document, which is publicly available ahead of the meeting so you can review it. And then we will hit highlights or answer questions on those reports instead of just reading them out at the meeting. So we'll go through these standing reports, and if there's anyone who needs to highlight something out of their report, or if you have questions about those reports, we can address those then. So first up, we've got the PUC staff update. Daryl, did you have anything you wanted to highlight?
Well, it looks like Kimberly Culp added a note to the standing reports document that the FCC also issued another item that I didn't have in my list, which is regarding wireless emergency alerts. And it's FCC 23-30. Is anybody familiar with that one? Kimberly, I don't know if you're on the call.
I am on the call, and There's a group of us preparing comments to file. The due date, I believe, is the 21st of July for comments, and then you'll have a reply comment period. There's a lot of questions that the NOPR is contemplating. Some of the questions have to do with accessibility. They're wanting comments also on template use and language translation. So it's definitely worth a read if you want to chime in and participate.
This is Cheryl, excuse me. I have Patty. She emailed me. No, she went.
Hey,
I'm not understanding. What? I'm
so
sorry.
Patty, I think the issue is Patty said that she's getting the wrong document when she tries to open it. I'm putting the link for the folder for today's meeting in the chat.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome. Kimberly, was that all you had on the WAA?
This is Kimberly. Yeah, that's all I have. But if anybody has more questions or comments and they want to reach out to me, I'm happy to answer some.
Thank you, Kimberly.
This is Carl. I think they're adding like 13 languages to it. We're looking at adding 13 different languages in addition to Spanish and English.
That's a big change.
And I think it's auto translated if you're looking at that.
One other thing I wanted to point out about the FCC proceeding that I did have in the list was the facilitating implementation of next generation 911 services. When I wrote the report, they had not yet published it in the Federal Register, so there were no comment deadlines assigned, but that has since changed. The comment deadline is August, I want to say August 8th or 9th. Better go with 9th. It's the 9th, okay. So August 9th, and then the I don't have the reply comment deadline in front of me, but it's usually 30 days for the comments and then 60 days for the reply comments. It'll be another 30 days after August 9th.
It's 30 days. September 8th is the reply comment deadline.
Thank you, Sean. September 8th is the reply comment deadline. I know NASNA is working on some comments. I do plan on drafting some comments for the commissioners to consider. Because the commission has filed comments to the FCC on matters in the past regarding 911. I think this is a pretty important one. So if the task force wanted to put together some comments, or barring the task force, I think if individual 911 governing bodies want to provide comments, I don't think that would be amiss. And it looks like Sean put the link to the Federal Register entry for this notice of proposed rulemaking in the chat. Other than that, I think the rest of the written report stands for itself unless anybody has any questions for me.
Okay, this is Jennifer. Thank you, Daryl.
Jennifer, this is Holly.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, just so we don't get super far behind, did we pass the May minutes yet? Make a motion for May minutes?
Oh, sorry about that. No, I skipped right over that. Thanks for keeping us on task. If everybody had a chance to look at the May minutes, those were also sent out ahead of time and available. So unless anyone has any questions or corrections, I would entertain a motion for approval of May minutes, please.
This is Carl. I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Carl. Do we have a second?
Jeff Irvin, I'll second.
Jennifer, this is Holly. We just lost sound on Zoom of you.
Oh, I was calling for a vote. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
There we go. Anybody opposed to approving the minutes? Thank you. The minutes are approved. Thank you, Holly.
I brought my boss here today. You guys are supposed to all be very engaged. Show how much you appreciate these meetings.
Well, on that note, this is Jennifer, moving on down the report list. We had the ESP report, and we are waiting on that report. We are also waiting on the report from Entrado. Bylaws committee, I believe Kimberly has some follow-up for that.
And generally, if they don't provide a written report, we go ahead and ask if they have a verbal report. And I think, Sean, since you're here with Entrado, do you have anything for Entrado to report?
I don't.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Did you say you do or you don't?
I do not.
Okay,
Oh,
we heard I do.
I apologize. I mumble sometimes.
no problem. Thank you. This is Jennifer. I will turn the floor over to Kimberly for the bylaws committee.
This is Kimberly. So I have nothing additional outside of what I provided in the written report. So please take a look at that. And there is a document to review. So I'm asking everybody to review that document. We'll be calling for approval at our next meeting. So there is some time for everybody to review that. And then if you have comments or questions, please just send them to me via email and we can have some dialogue about it. Thanks, Jennifer.
And it looks like in the meeting folder for the day, we have both a clean and red line version of those proposed changes.
Yes, thanks, Daryl.
This is Jennifer. Thank you, Kimberly, and the bylaws committee for working on those, and look forward to the discussion at the next meeting. Okay, moving on, we have Jackie in person in the room. Jackie, do you have anything to add for your report for the legislative committee?
I do, because I didn't submit our written report. I apologize. The legislative committee basically has been working really hard. We made a prioritization list. We have about 4 or 5 initiatives we're looking at. Next week is a meeting. We're meeting every 2 weeks, and we are still fleshing out the language for the enterprise board. I will be meeting with Speaker McCluskey and Speaker Pro Tem Kennedy the week of the 26th. And so those notes for those meetings are kept on the list. So there are some brief notes of those meetings. If you have any, want to catch up, we do keep notes for those meetings. I wouldn't call them minutes, but we do keep notes. And like I said, we're just tackling things one by one.
Excellent.
And if you go to the task force website, it's under committees and then the legislative committee. And then just scroll down near the bottom, you've got meeting materials, and you've got the by date, the meeting materials for every meeting, at least the ones that we kept notes on.
Yeah, sometimes because if we're working on a document, we won't necessarily keep notes because the document is the notes.
Okay, thank you, Jackie, and thank you, Daryl. This is Jennifer. Moving on to 988 report. Do we have Kelly on the line? Okay.
I can provide a little bit for her. Behavioral Health Administration has hired a consultant to help Kelly with the facilitation of several of her duties, including the 911-988 integration working group. So far, they've only had 1 meeting, and I was the only 911 person at that meeting. I strongly suggested that they include some local 911 practitioners from various parts of the state so that we get some good representation there. They agreed to that. Jennifer's been working on getting a list of people that are geographically diverse and represent large and small 911 centers across the state to participate in that working group. They tried to stand up this working group before, and it never took off, simply because I think Kelly was just overwhelmed with all of her tasks. So having a consultant to facilitate those meetings, I think, will go a long way. One of the top items for that group will be, again, trying to develop a template policy. It won't be a mandate that you have to use the policy, but it will be something that you can use as a starting point for your own policy in your 911 centers if you choose to do so. on how to handle calls that are transferred from 988 to 911 and when it might be appropriate to transfer calls from 911 to 988 if you choose to do that. I've actually been working on that with Rocky Mountain Crisis Partners, which is the nonprofit that provides the 988 call center services in Colorado. The idea that we have is that once we have a draft, we're going to bring it to the 911 community and get feedback from the rest of you before it becomes the official template. So that this is something that all of you have had a chance to look at and provide your feedback on before it goes to the integration working group for approval. If anybody has any other information about 988 integration in your 911 centers, or if you have any questions for me to pass on to Kelly, I can do that.
Great. This is Jennifer. Thank you, Daryl. Moving on to Equal Access Committee. Cheryl did just provide a report. And does anyone have any questions for Cheryl, or Cheryl, do you have any quick highlights? Okay, thank you,
This
Cheryl.
is Holly. I just wanted to also mention that we're looking at hosting a town hall with 911 PSAPs and with disability community members, and we really need more insight from 911 folks on what that town hall should look like. So there is a document that's been created on some initial ideas for what that town hall could encompass. And the idea is to collect testimonials from people who do not use 911 in a traditional sense. And they, whether that be they have some type of hearing loss, vision loss, and they're not able to use 911 in a traditional sense. So we want to collect testimonials on their experience and then develop trainings for PSAPs on how to better serve those individuals. And then additionally, we want to hear from 911 centers and PSAPs on where you think that you are missing pertinent information for effectively taking calls from individuals with disabilities. And so that's where we would love to hear more from the 911 community on where do you think that information is lacking on how to best prepare your call takers and dispatchers for accepting those types of calls. So there is a link in there on that town hall that would be great if we could get some comments and feedback on.
This is Cheryl. Our next meeting is August 31st.
And this is Daryl. I just want
This is Holly. Oh,
sorry, go ahead, Holly.
the next meeting is actually July 27th. Unless I mean, so just if you want me to update
No,
that.
thank you.
Unless you're out of town and that's why you're canceling it.
Nope. And I would like Julia Beams to present on AAC potential emergency messages. So if I knew, use, so that if I had to use my iPad to call 911, you would know that it is a device.
This is Jennifer. So you're hoping to have Julia present at the next Equal Access Committee meeting?
Yes.
Okay,
And this, Daryl, I just wanted to point out too, that I've called for more 911 participation in that committee at past meetings, and I'm going to reiterate that. What that committee is focusing on now is identifying what gaps there are in available training for 911 call takers and dispatchers regarding how to handle calls from people with various disabilities, and potentially even developing training where those gaps exist in the future. So the more 911 people we can get to participate in that, the better. I also wanted to point out that on the Equal Access Committee webpage of the task force website, I have added a number of existing online resources that were identified as part of that survey that we did to see what resources are already out there on that topic. So I would encourage people to take a look at that.
Thanks, Daryl.
thanks, Daryl. Thank you, Cheryl. Did you have more?
No.
Okay. And I also would like to recognize Sarah Shover from South Metro. She is co-chairing with Cheryl and Holly, the Equal Access Committee. So thank you to Sarah, and please do attend the Equal Access Committee meetings for 911 representation. All right.
Jennifer, can I just add something there? This is
Yeah, go
Patty.
ahead.
I just
Thank you,
want to say that as a recent member to that committee, the things that I have thought I knew about that community in all of my years in public safety were so outdated and untrue. I've learned a tremendous amount just in the last couple of meetings. So I would encourage more folks to join, or to at least look at some of the videos and stuff that Cheryl and the folks have put out, because it is, at least for me, it was an eye opener. Just the things that I held that I thought were true about the group or the community were not at all true at all. So.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing, Patty. Sorry, just looking at something here. Okay. Moving on to the outage committee. And do we have Tina on? And did Tina have anything to add, or did anybody have any questions for the outage committee?
Yep, this is Tina. I'm here. I don't have anything additional, but happy to answer any questions.
This is Daryl. I'll add that the role of the outage committee has changed a little bit with the new commission rules that went into effect at the end of March of this year, which created an informal investigation process that has to be done by commission staff. So a lot of those outage investigations that were being done by the outage committee now are now being done by myself. The outage committee can still do its own investigations if it chooses to do so, but there really hasn't been any need for that up to this point. But the outage committee still has a role in that they are part of the investigation process and the rules. They are part of the meetings if we have them. They also review the questions that go to CenturyLink prior to those questions going to them for a response. And they're also reviewing the responses from CenturyLink. I do want to mention that one issue that we've been having with tracking outages recently, and there's not an easy way to say this, I'm not trying to cast aspersions at all, but CenturyLink has essentially stopped notifying the commission of outages. And it really boils down to a disagreement over what constitutes a basic emergency service outage under our rules. I will be having some internal discussions about what we can do to address that situation. But in the meantime, I am asking 911 centers, the PSAPs, to notify me if you have an outage, because I might not know about it otherwise. CenturyLink has started copying us on the email notifications that you get of outages. But the problem with that is, as you know, you get a lot of false alarm notifications, and it's really hard for us to separate the wheat from the chaff. So it's very possible that you might have an outage that we would miss if you don't let us know about it. So that's the situation now. And if you guys can help us out with that, I'd appreciate it, because we want to track the outages that we receive. And we also won't necessarily know if one rises to the criteria that require an investigation if we don't even know the outage exists. Matt, did you have your hand up?
I did. I would like to add that for the outage committee, I think we're still waiting on the last report or outcome from Lumen related to the big outage last summer, Ridgeway, Telluride, that affected Wesco as well. They're working on fixing that portion of the link between Telluride and Cortez in the BES network. They discovered that although it was groomed and supposedly carrying 911 traffic, it wasn't groomed, and it was not possible because the equipment wasn't in place at the endpoints to make that happen. So as I understand it, they're still working on that.
That is correct. And if you go to the outage investigation page of the task force website, that special investigation is still pending under special investigations. And it's 22-16. That's from September of last year. So it's almost a year old at this point.
It's been a long process.
Yes, it has. And as far as the commission special investigations, I will put a link, doesn't look like there's one on here now. I will put a link on the outage committee webpage to the proceeding that the commission opened to serve as a repository for those investigations. Right now, there's only one in there, but I have like 6 other investigations pending that will eventually be filed in there when those investigations are completed.
This is Carl, do you have any idea when that we get resolved about what the definition of an outage is? Because I think it's kind of a bunch of BS from Lumen to say it's not an outage because of transfers. I mean, if Grand Junction calls transfer to us because of an outage, and there's Lumen saying it's not an outage, but it creates a lot of problems.
I can't tell you when that will be resolved because I'm not sure what approach we're going to take at this point, but I can tell you that it's important to me that it's resolved. So.
Yeah, and because I think also that I think they've done that in the past where they haven't notified the comm center because they said it went to another comm center.
Mm-hmm.
And like I think Matt brought up the other day on the call, if you're in a condition for routing, it makes it difficult to send somebody to those locations if you don't know it's an outage. And their reply is, well, it was routed to where it was supposed to go.
Right. And you know, where it makes the most difference is that the commission by statute only has authority over basic emergency service, which is, you know, only a portion of the call flow. So we have to establish and get a good agreement among all the people as to what that means. Otherwise, we're going to keep going back and forth on this issue.
But no, I support the PUC. I mean, in that, I think everybody else would too, except for me.
Daryl, it's Jody with Thornton. I just have another question, and I don't know if it's on the radar or if it's just something I'm not familiar with, but what about just the frequency of the outages? For instance, yeah, the calls do roll over to another emergency communication center, but say we've had 4 in 3 months. Is the committee concerned about that and willing to investigate or help with that as well?
Yes, so for staff investigations to be triggered, the outage, first of all, has to be an apparent basic emergency service outage. And that's not whether CenturyLink agrees that it's basic emergency service outage. That's based on, because it's a staff investigation, it's based on my assessment as to whether it's a basic emergency service outage. And then it has to meet one of several triggers that were established by the task force. One of those triggers is similar outages in the recent past in the same area. That's not the exact wording, but basically if you're having multiple outages, like one every couple of weeks or something like that, that would trigger a special investigation. So, you know, as you have those, make sure that we're aware of them so that we can investigate those, because I know you have had a couple of those already this year.
I've had 4, thank you. I'll be sending you some information.
Absolutely, thank you.
Thanks, Daryl.
Great discussion and information. Thank you, Daryl and everyone. This is Jennifer. Is there any other comments or questions about outage or outage committee report? Okay, moving on to prepaid and collections. Jackie.
Hi there, again, no written report, I apologize. Our next meeting is Wednesday, the 26th. And if you want to be part of that committee, you sign up and you'll get the notifications. I hope that people are using or starting to look at using the surcharge remittance forms and audits and appeals draft. I know I have a couple authorities that are working towards that. I think it'll be really helpful. The more that do that, the more consistent it's going to be throughout the state, and the more telecom providers will be getting used to our forms and giving us the information we need. So see you on the 26th on that meeting.
And this is Daryl. Sorry to always have something to chime in. Part of what we'll be using that meeting for is, every year the commission has to set the prepaid wireless distribution percentages for the following year. That proceeding will be opened by the end of this month and will be concluded before October 1st, because that's what the statute says we have to do. Those wireless percentages are based, those wireless prepaid distribution percentages are based on wireless call volume at your PSAPs. So I will be able to provide, or Jennifer will be able to provide a list of percentages that we will be proposing to use for next year based on the information we receive through the Intrado user portal. So that'll be a good opportunity for you to look at those percentages and make sure that you think those are accurate, or let us know why they're not, if they're not. It's difficult because those numbers from Intrado are generally the only numbers we have to go by. But I do want to give people an opportunity to take a look at those before they're officially published.
Thank you, Daryl.
This is Jennifer. Thank you, Daryl, and thank you to Jackie and the Prepaid and Collections Committee. Those documents are the fruit of a lot of hard work, and I think they're going to be very useful to authorities and PSAPs in doing the paperwork that's required to remit and collect. So thank you very much.
Tracy had a comment about the outage committee report. I'm sorry, Tracy, that I just now saw it. Tracy is pointing out that the Public Utilities Commission and the FCC have concurrent jurisdiction when it comes to 911 outages. We have rules and the FCC has rules, and the providers have to follow both of our sets of rules. So especially when it comes to PSAP notifications, there are rules that that Lumen has to follow from the FCC's point of view as well. The FCC has a public safety portal that local agencies can use to report problems. I believe I have a link to it on the 911 program webpage, but either way, if you would like a link, if you would like that link, I can send it to you. Just email me and I can send you that link so that you have it. I do think it's important to keep the FCC apprised of issues like that, especially if PSAPs are not being notified when they're supposed to be.
This is Jennifer. Thank you, Daryl. Any other discussion? Sorry about that. Okay, moving on to reports committee. Do you have anything to highlight or any questions for Daryl on reports?
So the only thing to highlight is that the task force agreed a long time ago that we would send a report or file a report with the commission every other meeting. So that's once every 4 months or 3 times a year. And this is one of those meetings. So I did send out the draft report to everyone. So as part of this, as part of the standing reports readout, I would ask the chair to call for a vote to approve that report, or maybe first ask if there are any last minute amendments. It did go out to the reports committee for review, and I incorporated your feedback the best that I could. So if everyone's happy with where it ended up, we could call for a motion to approve the report.
Jennifer, thank you, Daryl. Does anybody have any questions or comments on that report that was sent out? Okay, I would entertain a motion to approve the report as written and submitted.
This is Kathy. I so move.
Thank you, Kathy. Do we have a second?
This is Carl, second.
Thanks, Carl. All those in favor of approving the report as submitted signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Everybody in the room is so quiet. All right, thank you very much. That is approved. Thank you, Daryl, and the reports committee for working on that. Moving on to ESNet Users Group, we do have Kathy on the line to answer any questions about the ESNet Users Group report. Kathy, do you have anything to highlight?
Not at this time.
Great, thank you, Kathy. Moving on to GIS Committee. Matt Gage is here in the room to answer questions about the GIS Committee report or highlight.
Are there any questions? Has everybody been to the new web map to check out your emergency telephone charge boundaries? If not, we'd like to encourage you to go to that link that's in the report. Review the map for your 911 telephone charge boundary, and then complete the survey that's in the left side of the map.
And if you don't, we will continue harassing you.
That's right.
This is Jennifer. I'll just highlight that we have had about half participation in the state, which is great. But Matt and the GIS committee are doing great work along with Grant Smith at the state. So please, if you have not gone in, I know that maps can be really intimidating, but the survey is very easy to answer. And it's essential that you participate so that we can continue doing the great work on the GIS side of things. So please do that. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to Matt or myself. And Matt's got his hand up.
Yeah, it's just a reminder, the purpose of this is to eventually provide a public map like this for citizens and the originating service providers to go to see what our 911, local 911 charge boundaries are, so they know by address or by physical location, what amount they should be collecting and then where to remit it to. And eventually, well, I think it does right now. It has if you look at the top right corner of the screen, you can test your address against the data that's in the map for who your 911 authority is and what the charge is for your location.
What's our address? Is it east first?
South.
South first. Gotta move this out of the way. So if you put in an address, Matt, how would you then pull up the data? Or would the final version would do that?
Yeah, in the final version, it will work. I tested it a couple of weeks ago. Try that pick list at the top left. Okay, try the search result in your top right. Try scrolling up.
Go up here.
Top right, underneath the search bar. So there's a results list underneath that. You'll have to get that search term. There you go. Can you scroll up underneath that? Looks like something's changed. We'll need to talk to OITGIS.
Okay. Yeah, the idea is, I think a lot of you have seen it before, that on the 911 program webpage, there is a map. I think it's on the basic emergency, no. Yeah, it's on the basic emergency service page. There is a map of the local 911 governing bodies in the state. And the idea was that you could click on each one and it would give you basic information like contact information that obviously needs to be updated. Emergency telephone charge, and if available, where to send payment to, The problem with this map is that I built it and I'm not a GIS person, so it has problems. It's got some overlaps and some gaps. I'm just a Google nerd. I'm not a GIS person. So we've got somebody from OIT helping us now, so we should have a much better map when we're done. But to do that, you guys need to go in and verify your service boundaries.
Well, we'll talk to Grant and get that sorted out. But I think the point's well made, that we want to clean up the topology between everybody's charge boundaries.
Yep, make sure everything's correct. And, you know, even though we can't use it right now to verify by address, if you go in, it takes a second. The survey is on right here on the left-hand side. So it's super easy. There's only 7 questions. You do have the option, if you've got a shapefile already, to upload that. And he is keeping track of which ones have responded by shading them with these hash lines. So I got to ask Matt why Montrose is not hashed in, but.
I know for a fact that Montrose actually responded. So,
Okay,
you
so-
know, the shading just hasn't gotten up.
Grant just hasn't gotten that shaded, guys.
Get after it.
That's right.
So I challenge you all to finish that by the end of the month. How about that?
I like that.
Yeah.
Depends on what month.
July. Thank you very much for
What year?
clarifying.
What year?
Wow. Okay then. Anything else on GIS? All right, moving on. Do we have Brandy on the meeting from Colorado Public Safety Broadband? Okay, moving on. Deanie from PSCS. Does anybody have any questions for Deanie? Or Shannon? I think Shannon's representing Douglas County today. And she has no mic, so, okay. Moving on to Amanda, the SWIC update. Does anybody have any questions for Amanda? I heard Amanda give her SWIC update at the PSCS meeting last week, and she has been extremely busy. They've had a lot of outreach for their assessments. So if you haven't heard from Amanda and you've reached out, she asks for patience and she will get back to you. Moving on to DFPC report. Does anybody have any questions for Connie? Okay, and Connie's up again. Does anybody have any questions about the 911 Resource Center report? Connie, are you on the line?
I am practicing my dispatching skills of doing 2 things at the same time because I'm on the fire commission meeting also.
After it's paid off, we will just pay for the true cost.
Did you have anything to highlight from your report?
Well, I'd just like to say that I very much regret not being able to be in the room, but trying to make the most efficient use of my resource by attending both at the same time. The only thing I was thinking of as you were talking was brought up in the CCNC meeting, which I know you were there too, Jennifer, about restarting your PCs, and they're going to get more aggressive in those that do not, beyond forced restarts, possibly even disconnecting from the system.
This is Jennifer. Thank you for that, Connie. CCNC is kind of cracking down on those reboots and restarts on a monthly basis. And the consequence is being disconnected from the radio system at the state. So please restart your computers. And I would also highlight, we are trying to reinvigorate the Colorado Training Standards Institute and update our material and start hosting those classes again. So thank you to Connie for leading that effort. And Connie, I have an update for you, so I will contact you after the meeting.
Sounds great. Thank you.
firefighter.
Okay, moving on to Rapid SOS. Is Karen on the meeting? I know she's down in Arizona at the state conference there this week.
I am, thanks, Jennifer. I'm melting out here and sorry I didn't get to chat with you too much, but nothing to report from Rapid SOS at this time unless anyone has anything for me.
Any questions for Karen?
No, but we're starting to get requests from our agencies about having access to like the license plate readers. And I've talked to our vendor about it coming through CAD. They're working on an interface, but I've also talked to Rapid SOS about it coming through that way. And what they need is for people to contact their manufacturers and request it through Rapid, so we can bring it through Rapid SOS. So no, we're not having to log into multiple websites to see those plates.
Thank you, Carl. Karen, did you have anything to add?
No, Carl, specifically what vendor are you using for your LPR?
I forgot the name of it. It's not France.
No worries. You're all welcome to CC me on any email outreach to your provider. If they have any questions about Rapid SOS, then I can make sure to connect them with our partner team.
Yeah, and this is Carl. I did talk to Sam about it. He has the name of it.
Perfect. Thank you.
This is Daryl. Before we go on, I see Kristen Perry wrote in the chat that she is new with the Colorado Broadband Office, and she just wanted to introduce herself. So thank you and welcome, Kristen. And if we get to that, when we get to that part of, we already did it today, but when we do the update for the Colorado Broadband Office, if Brandy isn't here, feel free to chime in if you have anything. Or if you might be the more appropriate contact to start putting on here for the Colorado Public Safety Broadband update, we can do that. Just let us know.
Thank you, Daryl, and thank you, Kristen. This is Jennifer. Moving on to CCOA. We did have a report from Kimberly and CECOA. Does anybody have any questions for Kimberly?
And sorry to go back again, but Ronnie says that it was hard to hear Carl. She asks, did you say contact your vendor for it to interface to Rapid SOS for LPRs?
Yeah. And this is Carl. And then the cameras our agencies are using are Flock cameras. And when I talked to Rapid SOS, they said to get with Flock, put that request into them.
She says, perfect, thank you. And I'm sorry if I interrupted, if anybody had any questions for Kimberly regarding CCOA.
Hearing none, this is Jennifer, and that is the conclusion of the standing reports. So we do have Megan Morrissey here with us now to do our presentation. So I will invite Megan to share the presentation, and welcome Megan from the Colorado Department of Health Care Policy and Financing to talk to us about the Behavioral Health Secure Transport Program.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me, and sorry for my delay. Just want to make sure I'm on the right presentation. Okay. Can you see my screen and can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Okay, cool. And this says 911 Advisory Task Force meeting, right? Okay, cool. So today I just want to talk a little bit about mobile crisis response and behavioral health secure transportation from the HCPF side of things and how it might be interacting with you guys over in the dispatch arena. Once again, my name is Megan Morrissey. I'm the Behavioral Health Secure Transportation Policy Advisor for HCPF. I work closely with Emily Holcomb, who is the Mobile Crisis Policy Advisor, although I'll be taking over benefit management of mobile crisis response, so I can answer some questions about that. And then we have our supervisors at HCPF, but we also work very closely with Behavioral Health Administration, and CDPHE is the one who wrote the Behavioral Health Secure Transportation rule. So we work very closely with them as well. Our stakeholders are a variety of people. This has been a work in progress. We meet once or twice a month in a variety of settings and ways. to try to work on these benefits. So I just wanted to kind of set the stage a little bit for a client in crisis and how that might be interacting. So Mobile Crisis Response Team, which I'll go into a little bit, is a team that will go to the community, to where the scene is, to where the crisis is happening, the behavioral health crisis, and they will assess the situation, do an evaluation of some sort, and then decide if they can try to keep the member in the community, which is like, or which is preferred to like keep the member where they can be receiving traditional services in the community, or if they're in crisis and they need to be moved to a different location, that's where behavioral health secure transportation comes into play and can get them to a couple different types of facilities. Behavioral health secure transportation also does facility to facility transportation. And then once that crisis is over, we have another benefit over at Medicaid called non-emergent medical transportation, because theoretically the client is no longer in crisis, and then the client can use that benefit to get a ride home, so we're not displacing people after they've experienced a behavioral health crisis. Mobile crisis response. You may have heard this a lot through the Behavioral Health Administration recently. It's a community-based response by a pair of crisis professionals to individuals in a self-defined behavioral health crisis, available 24/7, 365 statewide, offering crisis de-escalation, stabilization, and post-crisis coordination. This benefit is an additional option to the existing crisis continuum in Colorado to improve services for clients and reduce administrative burden by creating one mobile crisis response benefit. The goal is to reduce hospitalization and arrests of individuals in crisis and keep people in the community as best as possible and connect them to services after a crisis occurs. It's regulated by the BHA, and we receive some ARPA funds to enhance this service. It can be done by a variety of professionals and paraprofessionals in the mobile crisis response team, and they must undergo professional training. The BHA is working on a learning management system that will provide a crisis professional training. I'm not sure if it'll be called certificate or what, but just specific learning modules that each MCR team will have. It's billed through the RAY for Medicaid members and ASOs for insured and uninsured individuals. The important thing to note is that it's available to all Coloradans. So you may, over a 911, receive requests for behavioral health service or behavioral health crisis. And it's another option. Instead of sending a law enforcement professional, you could send a mobile or a co-responder professional. You could send a mobile crisis response, which is not law enforcement. You can also refer them to 988. And so we're hoping that all of these triages, and triage we know sometimes can be messy, can help support getting people to stay in the community and getting them wrapped up into traditional ongoing care instead of perpetuating that like crisis response cycle. Mobile crisis response and EMS can refer to each other when appropriate. If mobile crisis is on scene and they determine that there's a medical need, they can call for EMS. They might reach out to 911 to call for EMS. EMS can also refer to MCR if needed as well. So like if EMS is on scene or if a law enforcement officer is on scene and they determine that there's a behavioral health crisis and they think that mobile crisis response might be able to manage it in the community, they might call for mobile crisis response. All emergency services are expected to be available to coordinate with MCR teams when appropriate, and other crisis continuing responsibilities are allowed to continue. So I know that's like a general mobile crisis response, and I'm just stepping into coordinating some of that benefit. So I've been really focusing on behavioral health secure transportation, which is based on a county level. So in some ways, it's very localized, and it is governed by CDPHE rule and then county rule for licensing and permitting of these types of vehicles. The purpose is to provide an alternative option for behavioral health crisis transportation that doesn't include like lights and sirens and doesn't take an ambulance out of service. So it's supposed to be administratively simple and billed separately from other services. So mobile crisis response is one service. Behavioral health secure transportation is a separate service, and it is billed as a fee for service for Medicaid members only. I published, here's some links to the CDPHE rule. The big piece is that it's county regulated. So from 911 perspective, you might receive questions regarding getting BHST services. And I want to address kind of like maybe how those might be answered. So Medicaid offers a range of transportation options. We have our scheduled, which is non-medical transport that usually is to help people get to a job site or get them to community integration services, or non-emergency medical transport, which is like to get members to a planned outpatient or inpatient appointment. Then we have behavioral health secure transportation, which falls on the unscheduled side of things. So it's similar to emergency medical services, but without the medical piece. And so it's a little like ambulance light, but I'm not really sure how people are in practice with each of their company policies going to utilize certain vehicles. So I'll talk a little bit about what it might look like, but the truth is it's very flexible, so it can look a lot of different ways. The other flexibility is in emergency medical transport, specifically if like you have provided treatment to a member or client in crisis. Generally, they're going to have to go to an emergency room to get, medically cleared and all of that. Behavioral health secure transportation offers transportation to different levels of care. So it's again that community to facility and facility to facility transportation. So I just wanted to review some definitions that might come up for you if your constituents are getting like a phone call or something like that, looking for support. So behavioral health is inclusive of both mental health and substance use. Behavioral health crisis means a significant disruption in a person's mental or emotional stability, functioning, resulting in an urgent need for immediate assessment and treatment to prevent further serious deterioration of the person's mental or physical health. Secure transportation means urgent transportation services provided to individuals experiencing behavioral health crisis. Client eligibility. So the reason I'm bringing this up is because the rule, all those definitions are from the CDPHE rule, which we just repurposed and didn't change. There is no prior authorization necessary. And so we don't want our behavioral health secure transportation providers to just be out there on the street and not know where a person should go or not have the ability to do a behavioral health assessment, which is not part of their scope. And so we included that a crisis must include a professional in some way, shape, or form. So that could be an intervening professional, which is generally those people who are able to do M1s, 2765 holds, a skilled professional, which is generally a master's level clinician. And that skilled professional definition, we believe, is going to be changing and updated in the behavioral health rules, but it's just not updated yet. And that will be changing to crisis professionals. So again, that's those people who are going to get that specialty training from the learning management system over at the BHA. An independent professional person, a certified peace officer, because they can do the M1s and the transportation holds, or an emergency medical services person. And again, this is coming from an emergency medical services person in the new BHA rules, in the draft rules, looks like they will be a provider who can do those 0.5 transportation holds. So we want to make sure that we're including that professional. So the provider eligibility is a variety of enrollment resources, but they have to be licensed and meet all the criteria. And I'll get into the different type of licensures. Secure transportation can cover voluntary or involuntary transportation. So involuntary would be like those M1 holds or those kinds of, or emergency commitment or involuntary commitments, stuff like that. The transportation to different types of facilities are listed out here. So it can be a hospital. If you have to go to the hospital, you have to go to the hospital. It can be a crisis stabilization unit, acute treatment unit. It can be a walk-in center, which are designed to support and de-escalate and stabilize behavioral health crises. So that's what all of these outline. It can be a substance use facility, so withdrawal management facility, we see this coming into. The exclusion, so this is from a payment standpoint, but also stems from EMS rule, which is we're really only providing, similar to EMS, we're only providing payment for a loaded transportation. I know 911 professionals probably work a lot with emergency medical services, and we can really only provide payment for that loaded trip. And so we really want to make sure that in the triage section of things, and when things are being triaged, that we're getting the appropriate level of transportation services. So if they do require, or if there's an inkling of some sort of medical need, then that would be maybe more appropriate for an emergency medical services to have a paramedic come through and see and check everything out. If it's, straight behavioral health, no medical concerns, that kind of thing, then maybe behavioral health secure transportation might be an option. So things to note is transportation when a member is chemically restrained is disallowed by CDPHE rule, and transportation when the member requires medical treatment or active or ongoing medical monitoring is also disallowed by the rule. So that would be, probably that would go to like an ambulance level of transportation. Over at Medicaid, we cannot provide reimbursement for law enforcement transportation, and a lot of behavioral health secure transportation has often been done by law enforcement. And so this is to create another option to relieve law enforcement need to do these types of transportations, because we know they're very busy. The only other important piece to know is we did add a little extra piece that is transportations where restraints were used in the context of voluntary transport are not reimbursable by HCFA. And that is because if you are going to use restraints, then we need to have like the administrative and legal authority to do so. And so that would be where we're leaning on our Behavioral Health Administration 2765 criteria to be able to do that effectively and safely. Prior authorization is not required. And again, the gatekeeping element that we over at HCBUF have included in our rule is that this is not a self-dispatched service. Mobile crisis response, yes, that's a self-identified client that calls 911 and says, hey, I'm having a behavioral health crisis, and mobile crisis response can go to that client. A client cannot request behavioral health secure transportation. Just as in like, we probably wouldn't want a client just calling directly an EMS service saying like, hey, I need an ambulance. They would call you, dispatcher, and say, like, hey, this is what's going on. And then the ambulance can do de-escalation, treatment, and assessment. Behavioral health secure transportation is really just the transportation element of things. Okay, so how does this affect you? So like I was just saying, the member themselves cannot request behavioral health secure transportation. There must be a certain type of person who is helping to establish that it is in fact a behavioral, meets the standard of behavioral health and definition behavioral health crisis. So the intervening professionals, I just kind of went through all the different types of professionals that you might receive a phone call from requesting behavioral health secure transportation. So it could be an intervening professional, which is a professional person. These are all the people who can write M1s. A skilled professional, again, that's changing to crisis professional, an independent professional person, and then a certified peace officer and EMS, which I kind of already went through, but I wanted to like kind of have this slide for you guys to reference if needed. So the biggest question that I've been asked is like, well, how am I going to access this service? So again, from a member perspective or from a client perspective, they wouldn't really notice the difference between an ambulance. Well, they'll notice the difference based on vehicle, but an ambulance transport versus a behavioral health secure transportation, because it's not really necessarily on the client to decide whether like what type of ambulance they get, right? Or something like that. And so we are asking for local collaboration because this benefit is for the first time regulated and for the first time funded and regulated at a county level. And so the counties are the ones that are doing licensing and permitting of the staff and the agency and the vehicle. And I have done my best to create lists for people to connect with each other. And that's also why I'm connecting with you, because I don't want 911 dispatchers to be caught off guard. and get messages from people like, hey, can I have behavioral health secure transportation? When the individual themselves isn't requesting it, it would be a provider request. And so what I've put on my website is that I'm asking, once a provider is enrolled, that they let people in their local area know that they're in operation and that they are licensed appropriately and ready to receive business or calls for service. I've asked that they use your administrative line to just let you know that it's another available service. Kind of like if another ambulance like came into the area and set up shop, they might like let you know, hey, we're here now, like please like give us a ring if you need anything. I'm asking that they reach out to mobile crisis teams so that mobile crisis teams know that they're available, because mobile crisis teams are responsible for care coordination to get people where they need to go in their level of care. And I'm asking the behavioral health secure transportation providers to also reach out to emergency medical transportation services to let them know, hey, we're in town now. If we can relieve some of your calls for service in any way, like here's where we're at. And also like if I get a call that I get on scene and it's no longer appropriate for me to drive, like I just want to be able to refer to you if I need to. Also asking them to reach out to community behavioral health services for that facility to facility transportation, and then also other types of facilities that might be in their area. So I know it's not ideal, because I wish there was like some repository of information that was just for providers for people to look at, but that's not ready yet. And so we are working with 988, and then also I'm keeping tabs on 911 and meeting with you now to kind of just let you know that this benefit is live. I don't have any enrollees through the process yet, but I hope as soon as I do have official behavioral health secure transportation providers enrolled, that I can post that publicly and at least send that out to your team, this team as well, so that you guys are aware of who's operating in what areas. Again, it's county level. And so there is some administrative burden on our providers because the way that the definitions are structured, they must get a license and permit for every county that they are going to pick up clients in. So it's been a little bit of a heavy administrative lift. The only caveat is a ground ambulance agency licensed pursuant to CDPHE rule is exempt from additional secure transportation licensing requirements. So there is a possibility that your ground ambulance licensed agency might also flex into a space where maybe they're utilizing supervisory cars or a different type of vehicle and a different staffing level to also add behavioral health secure transportation to their repertoire of services offered. So that is an option that you might see. The three main buckets of stakeholders and people that I've seen since starting this project, which is like less than a year ago, is we have behavioral health agencies or providers that are interested in providing transportation and billing for transportation. We have ambulance agencies that are looking to like maybe flex into providing behavioral health secure transportation and using ambulance or whatever. And then we also have this other third group of stakeholders, which are private security companies. And they've been doing maybe some of this work before, but it's never been regulated before. And so again, this is for the first time regulated and for the first time funded. So it has been a lot. So just to recap, how it will work on the system and where 911 might be involved is like in this before MCR team or other qualified professionals provide crisis intervention. So it's that triage part of things. And then we would move to changing locations if we have to, and you can use that other type of transport, which would be like your ambulances. And you can also use BHST to get to a facility. And then at that facility, if there is another need or that facility like decides that they need a different level of care, then they can use BHST to go to the secondary facility. And then to get everyone home safe and sound, we have non-emergent medical transportation that is offered by Medicaid. Just a heads up, there are two types of licensing and two types of vehicles that are outlined in the CDPHE rule. I don't think it's going to impact you that much, but I just wanted to let you know that Class A is licensed to use restraint and Class B is not licensed to use restraint. So if you get a call from a provider that's like, hey, I don't think that you're going to get a call like this right now, but like if you might at some point get like, hey, I have a client here and I need secure transportation to this walk-in center. And they're acute, but I'm happy to ride with them. And I think that they would prefer to be in restraints or something like that. Then that would have to be licensed Class A behavioral health secure transportation. So again, I'm asking behavioral health secure transportation providers, once they're completely enrolled, to please like let their local agencies know and give their local agencies like the rundown of what type of service they are and what they can and cannot do and what they want and are willing to do and what types of rides they're not willing to do and their capacity for service. So what does that mean for you? Like, what is your responsibility? Generally, I know that 911 gets a lot of various calls that maybe like aren't necessarily what they are designed to do, but it's that triage element of things. And so I think the responsibility that I'm asking and just like kind of presenting here is just that you be aware that this is a thing and that it's a thing that's distinct from mobile crisis services. Mobile crisis services comes with a specialized trained group of people who can, a team that can do intervention and de-escalation and all of that. Behavioral health secure transportation providers are really just to provide that transportation element to get someone from point A to point B. And I just want to like, we want them to operate within their scope. The other question that I've heard is like, okay, well, can behavioral health secure transportation providers refuse a ride? So they can't determine the need for the ride because that's determined by an intervening professional or an MCR or law enforcement, but they can determine whether they have capacity to safely deliver this person to the place they need to go. And so behavioral health secure transportation provider can decide what level of transportation is required. So if that client is outside their capacity or they're licensed to not restrain and it looks like this client's going to need restraints, then they might say, hey, I am not at capacity to do this ride, but you should call for higher level of transportation care, which would be emergency medical services, ambulance. Yeah, and that's what I got. Sorry for talking so fast and open to questions.
This is Jennifer. Thank you so much, Megan. And do we have any questions from either on the chat or on Zoom or in the room?
So Megan, this is Daryl. I just have one question. I know you said you don't have any providers who've gone all the way through the enrollment process yet. And you're going to encourage them to reach out to their local agencies, including the PSAP, to let them know that they're in the community and available as a resource. Do you think there'd be any opportunity for your office to follow up with them to make sure that they've done that? To make sure that they have reached out to the local 911 center to let them know that they're available?
Yeah,
Just
I think
to close that loop.
Yeah, sure. I mean, so right now we have like 14 applications, so they're just not like completely done yet. But that was like, yay, positive for me. I think I can't make them do anything. I have to stay within my lane, but I am definitely going to, and a lot of people know who the players are already. But yes, I will be doing a follow-up email and just being like, hey, like this is kind of best practice to let people know that you're around so that if people do get called for this type of thing, then, they'll know that you're there. And generally speaking, the providers that I've talked to, like, we know that there is a lot of work to be done. And I know that it's to relieve pressure on some ambulances. But I do see that there could be like maybe some competition, but we know that there's a lot of people who need our support and help. So I'm hoping that on the local level, I'll be able to also publish who these people are, and who these vendors are, so that you guys can have that information as well. And giving that to 988. I haven't, and maybe this is a question for your audience, I haven't decided whether I should go to 211, because again, it's not a member accessible benefit. It needs to have that like provider touch in order to assure that everyone's safe along the way and it's the appropriate level of care. So that's why my hesitation with like putting on 211 or something like that. But all our information is public anyways. So if you have any thoughts on that, I definitely take them.
Do you have any, does anybody have any thoughts on that question, whether Megan should be reaching out to 211 as well?
I would
think it's
say,
okay.
as an emergency manager that exit licenses for Delta County, I would say probably just contact 911 or it's gonna be the ER or a physician or something requesting that. So I don't think 211. Otherwise, the patients could be calling themselves.
Yeah, could you hear that, Megan?
I couldn't really hear it, sorry.
We have an emergency manager here in the room from Delta County, you said, who his suggestion was no, because of that danger of people trying to basically self-dispatch, that it needs to be coming from a provider.
Cool. Yeah, that's what I was suspecting, but I figured I'd ask the experts in triaging crisis. So.
And we have a question in the chat. Patty West from Boulders asks, she says, that was my question. So there won't be any ambulance services providing transport. And I'm guessing that it depends on whether they need medical monitoring during the transport or not, and whether or not there is a behavioral health secure transport available. Is that right, Megan?
Correct. So it's like not to take away, and it's just like an additional option. And so the other piece to note is like behavioral health secure transportation can provide voluntary or involuntary. So say you have somebody on an M1, if they're an M1 and compliant, then maybe BHST would be a good option, you know, like just a standard car with a standard person. If they're on an M1 and non-compliant, then it would be more likely that you might want to go with an emergency medical services, an ambulance. The only piece that I do want to let you know is ambulance services providers, and I think I kind of talked about this, and sorry if I'm repeating myself, but ambulance service providers can do behavioral health secure transportation as well. It's billed, our rates are, you know, comparable in certain ways. So our base rate is $260, $266. I can't remember off the top of my head what an EMS response base rate is, but it's slightly higher. But we do use the same mileage, so $6.10 per mile. So that's consistent across the board. So the idea is that it would be like a cheaper alternative due to like different staffing and different vehicles for ground ambulance services. And ground ambulance services don't have to do anything additional except to follow BHST rules. So they can operate under their ground ambulance license. And as long as their vehicles are up to par with the CDPHE and county regulations, we're good.
So there, I have a question for Al, if you can hear me from back here. This is Chris Stewart, Delta County OEM. So we have like a rotating basis. We have 2 licensed providers in Delta County to dispatch, alternate who they send calls to if we get. I don't think we haven't gotten any calls yet, but should it be kind of like a tow rotation and one call goes along, they go to the other, or do they have to specify which provider they want?
Did you hear that, Megan?
Yeah, so you're talking about which provider and like how to protocolize maybe like who you call out. I think I would encourage like, you know, a protocol of some sort, although I can't speak to business practices of each of your dispatch agencies. I think it would depend on like the level of need of the client. So on some level, there might be like some triage questions that you might want to ask. So like, are they chemically restrained? If yes, then like they can't be BHST. If they need medical monitoring, if yes, then they can't be BHST. The other piece would be like, you know, I'm a clinician as well. So I've done mobile crisis response in rural areas and urban areas. And, you know, like those times when you can't take an ambulance out of service or when you don't have enough providers, I am suspecting that the easiest rollout or the initial rollout will be a lot of facility to facility transport so that, emergency room or emergency department to psychiatric facility transport, because that like would count. And then we could use like non-ambulance vehicle maybe. But so that's why I'm suspecting like that rollout will happen more quickly than the community pickup to the facility walk-in center or something like that. But we'll see, because we already do have the transportation hold like on the books. So some people have been using it in certain ways and some people have been using it in other ways, and some people are just not using the transportation hold. And so with the new BHA draft rules and the rules coming into the space soon, and some of those changes, maybe that's where we would see more support or more integration of BHST being used. But as to like who to pick when, I think I would like, this is probably like it's lower level transportation than ambulance need. I don't know if that helps answer your question at all, but just my thoughts.
Any other questions for Megan? And I believe Megan is going to send an updated version of this presentation to Jennifer so that we can put it in the meeting folder today. So, because I know there's a lot of links in here, so if you want to follow those links, you'll have that available to you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, and feel free to reach out.
So Jennifer, thank you so much, Megan, for being here and for the presentation. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. Take care, y'all.
All right. So on the agenda, it says break for lunch, but I think Matt has stepped out to check on the status of lunch. So we will press on until we get confirmation of that. So I'm not going to release you all to food if there isn't any food yet.
You have a riot.
I know. I'm not going to do that. So just checking to see if anybody has any old business to add before we move on to new business. Hearing none, the first order of new business is to review EMS provider required communications methods language, and that will be Jody Chin. Jody's in the back of the room, so I'm just going to ask her to speak up so that the owl can pick up your voice, or you're welcome to come up. That would be fine. There's a lot of cabling up here, so
I'll move temporarily.
watch your step.
No, that's cool. I'll just go right here. Okay, so I was approached by one of my board members who also sits on a number of boards, asking how to conduct some or find out some information regarding a new task force that has been set up. And so through that, I reached out to Jennifer as the task force chair to kind of figure out where this piece should go. But then we got connected with Randy Kirkendall, who's the special projects manager for the Office of the Chief Medical Officer, but he's also leading the ground ambulance licensing task force. And their job currently is to work on language for minimum communications capability standards for ambulances. First, I was kind of surprised that the state of Colorado didn't have one. But they reached out and their question was, and I apologize here, let me get into this other screen and Jennifer can pick this up because she was on a meeting I wasn't able to make, but there's a little bit of discussion between the ambulance licensing requirements that PHE has asked them to come up with. And that is, there is a piece to it where many of the private ambulance companies do not wish to carry any form of radio communications. They want to go solely based on a cell phone communication model, probably I would imagine for cost and maintenance and whatnot. That leads the non-private ambulance companies in the county-based and the hospital-based said, whoa, we don't agree with that. We think every emergency vehicle should have a radio communication piece in it. Jennifer, are you able to share the language?
Yeah, I sent it to your email.
Is it in there?
Yeah.
Okay.
So Daryl can.
So they have some proposed language, and what they're really looking for is some conversation from the 911 stakeholders, the PSAPs, asking our thoughts on this. And Jennifer and I have spoken, and we both concur with each other's thoughts, is that every ambulance should be have radio capabilities. We all know that cell phones can be precarious, especially in the rural areas. And so any emergency vehicle really should have two different forms of communications. And one of those should be a radio that can reach a PSAP. And I don't know that we discussed if that was via a MAC channel or if they needed to have their local PSAPs. But for safety purposes and for MCIs, where we bring in multiple ambulances, including those private ambulance companies, we really felt that having a radio-based communication or a DTR radio was vital, and they're getting a lot of pushback from that. So I'm gonna let you kind of speak to anything that you learned on that meeting, but that's kind of where we're at, is asking the 911 community on behalf of this ambulance licensing task force to give their opinion to the task force on the communications language that they want to put into these new rules, this new rulemaking. So.
And this is Jennifer, and Jody laid it out very nicely. This is one of the largest 911 professional organizations in the state that can provide a voice from the 911 community, which is what they're looking for. So they wanted to have the 911 community weigh in on this proposed language that you can see on the screen. And it's deliberately vague. So when Jody says, you know, DTR or specifying PSAP or which radio communication system, you know, there's a lot of different, we have the DTR system, but a lot of counties have UHF or VHF capability. And so the language is deliberately vague that the task force, the EMS task force came up with, but they'd like to know if the 911 community feels that it's important for all ambulance services providers to have radio communications with a PSAP, as well as cell phone communication. And so I will open it up for discussion and comments and thoughts. I saw nodding in the room. You guys know you can use your voice, right?
Well, I'm not in a PSAP anymore, but I would absolutely say it's imperative that they have radio communication.
I have a comment. I agree that they should have two-way communications. The only thing that I would say, like if I was a private ambulance and smaller, maybe I don't have the money because radios are expensive. So like, if I'm gonna be made to get radios, you know, well, can you guys help provide that? Or like maybe have, like help them out how to pay for it or something, you know, having that resource available in case they do come back with that too.
And this is Jennifer, and I am sensitive. I mean, I think the EMS licensing task force is sensitive to that topic as well, because that's one of the objections that has come up. However, I know that the radio communication group in Colorado is pretty supportive. And also we're talking about really, I think all of our public safety EMS providers already have radios. So anybody that this would apply to that doesn't already have a radio is a private ambulance agency, i.e. for profit.
Yeah, so the for-profit agencies are pushing back simply because they have their own dispatch centers for the most part. And so they feel like being able to communicate with their dispatch center via cell phone is sufficient enough for their licensing requirements. But when we brought up the, for instance, any of these mass casualty incidents, our active shooters, our fires and all of that, frequently the private ambulance companies are brought in to assist and back up the main EMS agencies. And for them not to have communication with the PSAP that's managing that incident or the other ambulances is very concerning, because we all know that when that happens, cell phones get overloaded and they won't be able to communicate that way. And so you run the risk of losing where people are, where patients are going, and what's happening. And so that was kind of our discussion of why we feel like they need to have at least a radio with the ability to communicate in some form, whether that's putting on the MAC channels, whether that's, hey, you're assigned to Colorado Springs, then you need to be able to talk to Colorado Springs Dispatch or El Paso Teller, whatever the case may be. But that you don't get to be an ambulance and then opt out of safety equipment that's required of everybody else, right? So.
Got two hands in the back. Go ahead, sir.
I'm Randy Cassingham from Uray County. I'm on the 911 authority, and I'm also a captain of our EMS agency, so I have an interesting point of view on this. Like you were saying, you know, if you want to play, you gotta have a new ambulance fully equipped is around $500,000 now. How much of that is going to be radio? I mean, come on. But it is an absolute safety issue, and if they want to play, they should ante up. I mean, if you want to be a private ambulance and do transfers between hospitals, great. If you want to be assigned to an MCI, you need your equipment.
Thank you. And again, in the back,
Yeah.
project.
Chris Stewart, Delta County Emergency Management. I would, as emergency manager, former EMS, I fully agree with what Jody's saying. And right now, the county's licensed the ambulances. I'm the licensing authority for Delta County. And we require them to have two-way communication with Delta County Dispatch. They're two special districts, so obviously they have it, but I think, yeah, a private company is doing this for profit. They need to have a radio in their ambulance. Probably one thing that they push you back on CCNC might need to be consulted. I think there's limitations under the state's rules on private ambulances being able to be let on to DTR. So that might be a consideration. Maybe that's why they're coming back with that. That might be a discussion to have.
Even if they have the potential to win 911, I didn't see that in the bylaws, but they were that close.
Yeah, this might be something we need to look at with Pam and Office of Public Safety Communications. I think they tightened the rules at CCNC with some limitations on private ambulances being able to get onto the state DTR system. So that might be a caveat.
This is Jennifer, and I think that there are sponsorship pathways for them to join CCNC, but you bring up a good point. And that is another hoop that they would have to jump through, but.
Patty West says in the chat, also, I would think as a person being transported, they would want the ambulance to have reliable communication to the facility they are going to. Seems like a liability issue for them when their cell phones don't work.
Go ahead, Carl.
Yeah, just because on Daryl's point of view or comment, all hospitals should have a DTR radio that's assigned to them that they should be able to contact. And I think I think they should have it. Otherwise, I don't think they're a lot of use to us. Because we'd be probably calling ambulances from other counties before we call a private one, especially if they don't have DTR coverage. But I think that at a minimum, and it should also be up to each county licensing thing, but I think at a minimum, they should have all the regional MACs, especially if they're assigned to a region like Northwest, have all the Northwest MACs or West MACs to be used. Because if it's that big of an incident where you call them private ambulances,
Yeah,
they're probably using those.
Great. Any other thoughts or discussion or feedback for Jody from Zoom or the chat or in the room?
Jody, do you feel like you got enough feedback?
I think so, but I think that that answered all of their, I think we were on the same page with the task force. I think the task force just got some pushback and wanted to verify with the PSAP community that they were thinking the right way as well. So, yep, I can put together something and get that out to Randy. So, thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Jody. Do we want to?
I saw a thumbs up from Matt. So our food is here and ready. Yep.
Okay.
It's probably break and then come back and finish the last two items.
Great. So we are going to break to get some lunch for those of us in the room. For those of you in Zoom land, we wish you were here, but we're glad that you're attending in Zoom, and we will break and let's start back up at noon, do you think?
Yeah, that's probably good enough.
We'll start back up with the meeting at noon.
Those of you on Zoom, go get yourself a peanut butter and jelly sandwich or something.
Is that what we're having here?
Yeah. I'm gonna mute, just so you don't hear all the chatter in here while we're getting our food.
is Jennifer. So we are back. Thank you for the countdown, Holly. And I think that we are at the EPRC update. Vicki, have you joined us on the call? Did you get with Nina?
I do not see her.
Okay.
We can just hold this for next time. Before we go on though, I do want to acknowledge, because I gave kind of a 988 update since Kelly Bowman wasn't here. I do want to acknowledge that Amin and Madison, I think Madison might still be here. I don't see Madison anymore, but Amin is still here, and Madison was on earlier from Rocky Mountain Crisis Partners. So Amin, I'm sorry if I didn't mean to snub you earlier. If you have anything you would like to add to that update that I gave. And now I'm putting you on the spot without telling you.
You are. I don't, though I do appreciate you bringing it up even as a topic of discussion.
Thank you, Amin.
Okay, well, if Vicki joins us, we'll go back. Otherwise, we will move forward to the next item on the list, which is Joe Bankert's proposal for an alternative outage solution symposium. Joe?
One of the outage meetings recently, Lennon Schreck with Tolera participated. I didn't realize he was with the same company as Pierce Power, who I'd spoken to before, but they offer a solution that I think Arapahoe County is using, that if a central office gets isolated and 911 calls can't be delivered to the PSAP, they would provide a standby satellite service that would automatically, if the condition for routing is automatic in that CO, then they would automatically route by satellite the calls either directly to the PSAP or into the public switch telephone network, which would get them to the PSAP. And not really realizing it was the same company as Pierce Power, I mentioned to Darrell that if there are several companies doing this, it might be good to have some kind of a workshop or symposium or summit where we have different providers who provide solutions such as that. And I know there are also some microwave service providers who had participated in the 2019 network reliability proceeding, who have provided services. I think they did in Rio Blanco County. That maybe would have the meeting for PSAPs to for them to make presentations to some of the PSAPs and 911 authorities about the options that are available. I wasn't sure there were so many when I found out that both those guys were Tolera, but Darrell seemed to think there are other providers and that we should put it on the agenda. And understand, I've heard a rumor that CenturyLink is talking with some alternatives for getting, not CenturyLink, Lumen, alternatives for getting last mile when there's an outage. And so the question is, do we need to have a meeting to explore this, or would it be beneficial?
Thank you, Joe. This is Darrell. So for the, hold on one second. I think it's for the next meeting. It's either September or November. It's November. For the November meeting, we have planned to get a presentation from Kim Coleman with FirstNet to talk about the potential use of FirstNet as a secondary or tertiary backup for PSAP connectivity. So I think what you're talking about, Joe, would fit in nicely with that. And maybe what we would do is we expand that to a bigger conversation to talk about FirstNet, satellite, microwave, third-party fiber providers. Maybe we turn it into a longer thing. And that could be, like a special meeting of the task force, or maybe do it in conjunction with the resource center is what I was thinking. But I think there's some value to it, but I want to see what the rest of the task force thought as well.
I mean, I think that'd be a good, this Carl, I think that'd be a good idea. I know there's also the Jero that does the multiple devices together.
Right.
And they may also have contacts, because I think Nebraska's looking at using them, and I think California uses them.
That's a really good idea, Carl, because the Jero, what they do is they take the different kinds of connectivity and connect it all through one device into the PSAP. So they would have contacts for those other types of providers that we could reach out to. In some of those solutions, it's really gonna be up to CenturyLink to use them if they want to use them, because it's part of the basic emergency service that they provide. So it's going to have to be CenturyLink that subcontracts with them. And if there's a cost associated with it, they could, make an amendment to the tariff to pay for those costs. But there are other use cases for those where it might be the PSAP that does it. Because I think, as Joe mentioned, in Arapahoe County right now, they have satellite backup basically connected to two of the central offices that are not part, that don't serve a PSAP. But by having that satellite backup, they are providing another path for the citizens who live in those areas to call 911 if there's an outage. So I think it's worth exploring. So if people think that's a good idea, if the rest of the task force thinks that's a good idea, maybe me, Jennifer, and Connie, and we can work together with the Resource Center, and maybe put together a joint symposium for somewhere in the November timeframe. Sound good? You guys are not giving me a whole lot of feedback.
I like it. I think it sounds great.
Anyway, back over to you.
Thanks, Daryl. This is Jennifer, and thanks, Joe, for bringing that up and bringing that idea to the task force. All right. Anybody else have new business that is not on the agenda? I'm going to add one point and kind of go backwards. One is Vicki. Did Vicki join us? Okay. While we were in the meeting, Matt Gage reached out to a representative to possibly fill the rural ILAC vacancy. And I will let him speak to that. Who did you invite?
Darla Joseph, who's the operations manager for Nuclear Nattery Telephone Company in the west end of Montrose County. She had filled the position before, but unfortunately missed several meetings in a row. She's interested in rejoining the task force to fill that position, and promises to attend more regularly.
Okay.
So I guess you could say I'm nominating her, or she's self-nominating. Take your pick.
Okay, and this vacancy has been announced previously, and so I think it would be appropriate to call for a motion to vote on her filling that vacancy.
Doesn't Matt have to summarize her biography and background and qualifications?
No.
That applies to the regular elections, but not these interim appointments.
She's the ops manager for Nuclear Nattery Telephone Company, a rural elect. There you go.
And as Matt said, she has participated in the past. She's served in that position a couple of terms already, so.
Darla wears many hats and has lots of fires to put out on a daily basis, so it is sometimes hard for her to attend, but she's willing to go again.
Okay.
This is Holly. Can somebody repeat the name and where she's from?
Darla Joseph, and she's from Nuclear Nattery Telephone Company.
Thank you.
Or NNTC for short.
Okay, so we have a nomination on the table. We need a second.
I think that counts as a motion. See you in a second.
Okay, do we have a second for nominating Darla Joseph into that vacancy?
This is Carl also.
Karina and Carla seconded simultaneously. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Enthusiasm.
So loud. Any opposed? All right, thank you for that nomination, Matt, and filling the vacancy.
Railroaded again.
Did you actually ask her?
I did.
Did you actually ask?
I do have email proof that she has said yes, so. All right, moving on to open discussion. Does anyone have anything for the good of the order?
I have a quick question. When they were discussing the requirement of the two-way radios in the ambulances, were they looking for the task force to take a vote on that and kind of take a position, or were they just looking for the sense of the task force?
This is Jennifer, and they were just looking for the sense of the task force. When they reached out to Jody and Jody reached out to me, we debated speaking on behalf of the whole 911 community, but we thought maybe having this discussion at the task force would lend more weight and credence, but they were not looking for an official action from the task force.
And I'm glad that got brought up again too, because Cameron Decker with San Luis Valley 911 sent me a instant message about the question about whether private ambulances could be on the DTR radio system. And this is these are from the CCNC policies, and it says private ambulance companies that request access to the statewide DTR system may be granted talk group privileges as an associate member as determined by their contractual agreements to governmental agencies. So I just wanted to add his contribution to that conversation.
I think that most private ambulance companies are operating under some sort of MOU with the 911 providers as a backup. And I think that there's very few in the state that I know of that, or if any, that are just operating solely as a private interfacility transport. Most of them are backing up our major players anyway, so.
All right, thank you for the question, Joe, and thank you for the input from CCNC. Cameron, do you have something?
So just, only if we're done with that, sorry.
I think we're done with that.
Okay. So Jennifer was the chair of this task force and still is the chair of this task force, but she was the chair of this task force before becoming the 911 program manager. Under the current bylaws, there is nothing that says that she can't continue as the chair of the task force. The revised draft that Kimberly has distributed will be voted on at the next meeting would change that, and Jennifer would no longer be able to serve as the chair. I just wanted to ask, and I've already talked to Jennifer about this, and she has no hard feelings one way or the other. I wanted to ask if the task force had any thoughts about Jennifer continuing as the chair, at least until those new bylaws are voted on.
Which would be September.
September.
Basically.
So for the next, at least for the next 2 months until those new bylaws are voted on. I saw one thumbs up. Anybody have any thoughts?
What would that, because Jody would move in, but would she only move in for the partial term plus full year? Or
She
only
would,
for a partial term?
I would have to review the bylaws, but I think she would fill in for the rest of this term plus the full term next year.
That's correct.
When does that term expire? Sorry, this is Jim. When does that term expire? When is your term?
At the end of the year, the chair's term expires and the vice chair becomes the chair.
So in September, Jody would fill in for the rest of this year and then
Right.
fulfill all of next year as well.
And I'm good with you sitting as chair for as long as possible. And then I'll be happy to step right in.
You're gonna do great. There's a lot of help.
We've never had the chair be also the PUC, which is tasked under our rules to facilitate the task force. So I wanted to make sure that nobody had any concerns about conflict of interest or anything along those lines. And if nobody does, then we'll just continue on like this until, at least till September, when those new bylaws are voted in. Okay, thank you.
Anything in chat? I'm not logged into the Zoom, so I
Nope,
can't
no
see the chat. All right. Well, thank you. Who else has anything for open discussion? Well, I'd just like to congratulate Craig Regional Communications Center. They were recognized by Moffett County 911 Authority as first responders. So congratulations to Craig. And does anybody have anything else for the good of the order?
I'll just say thank you again for letting me sit in and Daryl telling me about this meeting. Learned a lot today, and touring the 911 center was very cool this morning. So if there's things that keep you guys up at night that I should know about, I'm happy to hear that from our role at the PUC. Maybe I don't.
Despite their silence in this meeting, this is not a quiet group.
I would not expect this group to be quiet, but it makes me.
It counts.
It just makes me feel good as just a person in Colorado that you all have come together like this and try to figure out how to work together and make it a really strong 911 system. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah.
Yes.
Definitely glad to have you.
Meant a lot.
Absolutely. It means a lot to me that you're here, and we have 34 people on the line right now, so these are fairly well attended. They're less well attended in the summer. Usually in the winter,
yeah.
we get as many as 70 people on these calls, so it's a pretty active group.
That's amazing. Thank you.
Thank you. And to that end, we will dismiss the meeting online, but I would ask that those of us in the room stay, and we'll just go around the room and do introductions as well. One of the benefits of coming in person is networking, and I want to make sure we facilitate that without doing a long and odious roll call at the beginning. So thank you very much for attending in person. Thank you for all of you who attended via Zoom. We very much appreciate your participation, and I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Carlson moved.
Movement and a motion and a second, and our next meeting is September 14th, and we will be in Colorado Springs. So hope to see you there.
And that was Matt who seconded for minutes.
Thanks. Sorry, Holly. All right. Have a great afternoon, everybody.
Bye all.
Thank you.